Okay, so here we are. Just so everybody hears it, I want to say it again. All right. So number one, welcome to Ringknocker, and number two, honestly, thank you for coming. Right. So I'm emphasizing the thank you because in 30 weeks of meetups, and 28 of them featuring guest speakers, this is the very first one where the focus of the meetup has been specifically Ringknocker, what the platform is, what it's good for, and how it can serve its members. That's you, shipmates, in your search for great customers, employees, and business partners. So you didn't have to be here on a Thursday night, but you are here, and I really appreciate it. But fair question, why you? And I mean quite specifically, why personally are you here? I mean, after all, it's not random, right? Each of you, going back to the very beginning, 30 weeks ago, is at the meetup by invitation. So how come you got the invitation and, not somebody else? Well, if you can hear my voice right now, this goes without saying, you're an extraordinary human being, right? And I'm not just greasing your tails. I'm using the word exactly as intended, extraordinary, beyond ordinary, right? So every single person on this call, with zero exceptions, has endured, let's say, embraced hardship in exchange for the privilege of serving our nation and one another, right? So we, all of us, to one degree or another, have exercised leadership in the face of mortal peril. So as a group, we're accustomed to accomplishment, right? When we say we're going places, we're not kidding around. And as veterans, we know instinctively that to accomplish really big things, you need a team, right? So we get that after deciding what we aim to accomplish, the very next question that we need to ask is, who do we want to meet? And that's the answer. You received an invitation to a Ringknocker meetup because for somebody else in the Ringknocker database, maybe for me, one of the top answers to that question, who do I want to meet, was you, each of you, all of you. And that in a nutshell is what Ringknocker sponsorship is for. It's a framework. It's a three-step framework that lets you leverage the Ringknocker platform to meet and recruit your ideal customer, your employee, your business partner, and turn every new relationship into a mutual win, whether you close the deal or not. So here's a question. How many officers did you serve with in the military? Every year across all U.S. Armed Services, about 17,000 officers leave active duty and enter the civilian workforce. So there are well over 500,000 of us out there doing stuff at a high level more often than not. So like I said, we're an impressive bunch. And right now, there are about 26,000 current and former military officers in the Ringknocker database. It's a small sample of the 500,000 that are out there, but it's growing at a rate of a couple of hundred a day. So within that small sample between military service and civilian life, the average officer, and this is it's not a special sample, okay? This is just a nearly a random sample of the whole. The average officer has served or worked alongside over 1,300 other officers on the list for well over a year on average, and often significantly more. Now that works out, you ready for this? That works out to over 45 million years of shared experience just between the pairs of people that make up this one small sample of the universe of current and former military officers. So that's what you might call a professional network. Now, if you went to Harvard, and I know at least a couple of us here have, you know that professional networking is, as an activity, is something that can not only be taught, it's something that can be plugged into a group at a cultural level. But since you're here, you also know that this isn't something we learn in the military, right? At least not on purpose. Not that we don't do it, but generally, we aren't really wired that way. So here we have this vast professional network based on experiences that are intense, right? As a bonding experience, I'd put plebe year at the Naval Academy up against pretty much any college fraternity's pledge experience, or maybe standing the midwatch together on 100 consecutive nights at sea, or, God forbid, holding a buddy's hand while he bleeds out into a mud puddle under hostile fire, right? We've got a bond. So a Sigma Epsilon frat kid can usually parlay his formative beer bong experience into a lifetime of professional growth. But a military officer with decades of honorable service in harm's way often can't. And when you come right down to it, it's because the whole point of the fraternity organization is to encourage its members to form bonds and then do business together in later life. Whereas the Service Academy Alumni Associations, charitably speaking, well, they do something different, right? So Ringknocker, you've heard me say it a million times. Our mission here is to support our shipmates, and that's a thing we roll up our sleeves and do, not just something we say. So Ringknocker is itself an act of service, right? It's explicitly about mutual service and support, just like those Harvard frat houses do, only the connection is a lot more about blood than it is about beer pong, right? But service to whom? I already asked this question once. After deciding what we want to accomplish, the next question we need to ask is, who do we want to meet? Well, if you do business at a high level, you don't need to reach 1 million people. You just need to reach a handful of exactly the right people. So out of 500,000 current and former officers out there, of whom thousands are your shipmates in some sense of the word, how do we identify and make contact with the very small number of candidates who best qualify as your prospective customers, employees, and business partners? Exactly who are those shipmates? How do you know who the right people are? Well, it's not an accident. To understand how we find who the right people are, I want to tell a story about the kings of finding things out, Google. And instead of finding people, just for a minute, let's talk about finding web pages. So when you do a search on the internet, how does Google know what the right web pages are? In 1998, web search was all about content, and that could be gamed, right? We saw this in search results. Every search generated 1 million results, and no matter what you were searching for, half your results were baldness, cures, and porn, right? It wasn't hard to game the old system. You just packed your web pages with keywords and metadata that made them look like anything to anybody. And the search engines couldn't tell the difference between useful stuff and spam, and your results proved it. You got 1 million of them. Google showed up in 1998 and completely cut through that noise. When you did a search on Google, even in the earliest versions, you get far fewer results, but the search results you got were the right ones. Google's system was also much harder to game, which is why Google has remained the dominant search engine for more than 2 decades, and why every other search engine now operates a whole lot like Google. So what did they do differently? Well, the founders of Google were among the first to realize that the links between web pages, hyperlinks, carry a ton of information about the quality of those pages. Think about how you'd go about getting the Wall Street Journal website to link to some article you wrote on your blog or a post you made on Facebook. It's not easy, right? Whatever you write has to be really good, good enough that some editor at the Wall Street Journal is going to bet, a little bit of the Wall Street Journal's reputation and maybe his job on linking to you. So that's the key. High quality web pages, whatever high quality means within the context of your search, tend to link to other high quality web pages. So Google uses that fact in order to deliver high quality, completely relevant search results to the top of the page almost every time. What does this have to do with Ringknocker? So is Peter Jukoff in the house? All right, good. I'm going to use his example. So let's say you're dealing with veterans and you want to sell a tattoo parlor franchise, right? So who do you approach? Well, if you go on LinkedIn, you can easily construct a list of people who have all the characteristics you're interested in. Let's say entrepreneurial veterans located in a specific set of metro areas with some interest or some experience in franchising, right? You can search by their location, the companies they work for, the schools they went to, the skills they have, lots of stuff. You can even search by their LinkedIn connections. And if you have one of the really expensive LinkedIn memberships like Sales Navigator, you can search on even more stuff, right? But at the end of it, what do you have? You have a list of up to 1,000 people with absolutely no way to tell which ones are the best ones, whatever best might mean for you. And because LinkedIn searches are limited to 1,000 results, you don't really have any guarantee at all that the best candidates even made it onto your list. So if that sounds familiar, that's a lot like pre-Google web search. And once you have the list or the search results, right, your work has only just begun because your ideal candidate could be anywhere in them, if at all. But just like web pages, you can tell a lot about people by their connections. So high quality people like you guys tend to be connected to other high quality people. And there are lots of different ways to be connected. LinkedIn connections for sure, but also, went to law school together, went to the same service academy together, worked at the same hedge fund, or served on the same ship together, right? So each of these is a link, and it could be a valuable link for you if it involves attributes that you care about, or not if it doesn't. And these are links that you cannot search for on LinkedIn, which really doesn't make any distinction between Naval Academy classmates and people who graduated 20 years apart. So it turns out that if you know enough about a group of people and how they're connected, the same math that drives the Google search engine is exceptionally effective at finding exceptional people who not only meet your requirements, but are exceptionally well connected to other exceptional people who also meet your requirements. And better, you can quantify exceptional. And even better, you can sort the list. So in other words, all you really need is one list. And really, all you need is the top of the list, the very top of that sorted list. So that's the key benefit of a Ringknocker sponsorship. We figure out who's at the top of your list. We invite them to meetups so you can meet them personally in a relaxed, high trust social environment. And just in case they don't show up, we give you the top of the list so you can make contact on your own. So now, instead of working through thousands of marginal franchisee candidates just to find somebody worth interviewing, our tattoo guy is working off a short list of maybe 100 people. And nearly every person on that list is either a pretty good candidate in their own right or is closely connected with one or two people who are, probably both. And instead of cold calling the more interesting candidates to set up an interview, our tattoo guy can invite them to a meetup or just show up if they're registered on their own and make a genuine social connection inside a rare and frankly excellent community of warriors before even opening a conversation about tattoo franchises. So that is just a better way to do business. When we did our first Zoom call back in March, it was immediately obvious to me that the power of the Ringknocker platform lay in its ability to leverage existing relationships. We're all veterans and officers, and that's a great start. It gives us a common set of experiences to draw upon, a shared language, a built-in secret handshake. But if you've got that, then you also know that as great as all that might be, it's nothing next to the kind of relationship you forge through an extended period of shared hardship and struggle. Whether that happens in training or in battle, once I've held your life in my hands, our relationship will never be the same. So that became my mission. Having established the Ringknocker platform, the meetups, the guest speakers, the newsletter, the video clips, all that stuff, I wanted to populate it with people who were highly likely to have already been through some shit together. Having got a few people to show up and participate and having articulated a mission of service to shipmates, I wanted to go out and find those people some actual shipmates to serve. Well, you folks who've been around for a while know that up until yesterday, my job involved developing stuff, right? Developing big software systems for big companies. And a few months ago, in my spare time, I rolled up my sleeves and started developing a similar system for Ringknocker, right? So this technology platform is now in its third generation. During the transition between generations 2 and 3, three things happened. First, I realized that you guys have more shipmates and classmates out there than I could possibly hope to invite to a meetup. Remember, on the average, over 1,300. So I can afford to be choosy, meaning it made sense to build demographic targeting into the new generation of the system. A significant way we support our shipmates is by doing business together. So I wanted to be able to focus not only on big things like leadership and entrepreneurship, but on franchising, specific skills and experience. Second, and you guys have seen this, right? We see real magic happening here. People who came to a large number of meetups started to announce that they were collaborating on things offline, right? So we started seeing regular attendance by really impressive people, people like Bill Watkins and John Cordell, my classmate Heidi Lenzini. I mean, these are people who are going to make a big dent anywhere they land. And the fact that they'd begun to roll up their sleeves and make Ringknocker their Thursday night thing, that was a huge vote of confidence for me, right? So third, I realized that Ringknocker, honestly, it's probably the best thing I've ever done personally. I spent 12 years of my life in uniform, and I will freely admit the military was probably better for me than I was for the military. But I've spent the 20 years since I left the service telling everybody who would listen about the magnificent qualities of the people who I was privileged to serve and lead, right? So the fact that I get to be here serving you guys again, it feels like a gift every time I prep for a meetup. And it's 100% where I want to be in my life right now, which is convenient because I just rolled off a big dev project on Wednesday night, and I'm not in any hurry to start a new one. So I had the ability to target new members to maximize mutual benefit. I had ample proof that the benefits were real, and I had the desire and the opportunity to take a hobby that was starting to feel like a mission and make it my full-time gig, which, to close the circle, is why we're here talking about Ringknocker sponsorship. Because to the extent that the big goals in your life revolve around meeting the right people, and to the extent that some of those people are current or former military officers, your goals are my goals. So a fair point. If your business is to sell $10 pizzas, Ringknocker sponsorship is not an effective way to find new customers. You need 1 million customers, and the volume of leads that we can promise you here is 3 orders of magnitude too low. On the other hand, if what you sell is $100,000 pizzeria franchises, then you're in the right place. Because in this case, you need to meet a very small number of leads with exactly the right qualities, so you can spend less of your life evaluating marginal candidates and more of it getting to know the really good ones. So at a high level, what does this look like? 3 steps. Number 1, you tell Ringknocker what you're looking for in your ideal customer, employee, or business partner. And there are lots of ways to do that, and we can talk about how that works. Number 2, we generate a prospect list and we share it with you. And you work your list, right? So we invite your prospects to register for meetups. You evaluate your prospects for goodness of fit, and then you make contact where appropriate. So ideally, invite them to a meetup, right? We'll let you know when they register. And then finally, based on your experience with your prospects and with your list, you provide feedback to Ringknocker and we improve the targeting of your list. And then we repeat that cycle week after week as often as necessary to dial in your targeting and maximize the quality of your list, right? So I want to, I've sort of anticipated a couple of questions here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and throw them out there and answer them because I think we're all gonna have them. So number 1, how big is the list? How many names are on the prospect list, and how often do I get new ones? So we'll talk about pricing, but the minimum list size is 100 names. And that should actually be more than enough for most sponsors, right? So this isn't you get 100 new lists every month. What we're doing here is we are scoring the entire Ringknocker database, and then you get the very top of that list with respect to your scoring, right? Ranked according to your requirements. So the list updates several times a day, and its content is affected in a couple of different ways. So the universe of contacts is constantly expanding, 200 to 300 a day, right? Right now it's about 26,000. Existing prospects are constantly refined as new data rolls into the system. And then the contents can change dramatically, the contents of your list, when we dial in your targeting, right? So as you sort of zero in on what you're looking for, the locations of people change on the list, new people come on, old people drop off. So you're only ever going to have one short list, but this is the short list of the best prospects that we can find as of a couple of hours ago. So the way that your list develops over time, that actually delivers useful intelligence of its own. Who stays at the top, who moves around, and so on. How is it delivered? So your Ringknocker prospect list is delivered as a Google Sheet, and it's published to an open link, which makes it easy to share with your stakeholders and your staff. Only you have the link, but it doesn't require a login. The list is read-only, but you can use the full functionality of Google Sheets to filter it, sort it, and otherwise slice and dice your data. So the most important pieces of information on the prospect list are identity and relative positioning. Each prospect is linked directly to its LinkedIn profile. The list does not contain email addresses, phone numbers, or other sensitive information, right? So right now, we are working on a opt-in, a piece of opt-in functionality for Ringknocker that will make it possible for your prospects to deliver that information to you. But remember, this is a very high trust environment, right? So we don't want to go sharing personal information unless people have given us permission. But that LinkedIn profile, given that the list is as short as it is plenty to make contact. Now, there are also tons of metrics on the list that describe a prospect's place inside your targeting requirements. They're fully documented. It's right there on the sheet so that you can understand the explanations of those metrics, and they're going to help us adjust the targeting of your list so that we can dial in exactly what you need. Okay, so let's talk about LinkedIn. If you've got a Ringknocker sponsorship, do you still need a LinkedIn account? Absolutely. So each prospect on your list links directly to its LinkedIn profile, and it's expected that LinkedIn, just as it is for us, LinkedIn is your primary method of first contact. But if you have one of the more expensive LinkedIn memberships, like Sales Navigator, or I forget what they call it, but the one for recruiters, you might not need it anymore, right? So Sales Navigator is a good example. It offers extensive search capability, right? It's basically a list builder, and you can build big, giant, monster 1,000-member lists. But then you've got to process those lists and figure out, who the best prospects are. And the whole point of a Ringknocker sponsorship is that we do that for you, right? So, truth is, with the sponsorship, you can probably get by with either the free or the sort of the lowest level paid LinkedIn membership, and it should probably give you everything that you need. What's the best way to use the sponsorship? So if they're not already attending meetups, most of the prospects on the top of your list will at least hear from Ringknocker on a regular basis with meetup invitations. So you can capitalize on this exposure by extending your own invitation. As you already know, a Ringknocker meetup is a great experience, right? So you can be confident that your prospect will enjoy it no matter what the outcome is with respect to your own offering. In fact, the best plan might be not even to discuss your offering at all. Just make the invitation. If it's their first meetup, your prospect will have priority to deliver an intro, and there will be plenty of opportunities to interact both by voice and video and via chat during the call. So you'll have an opportunity to get to know your prospect and really understand how you can best be of service, even really before you mention your own offering directly. And if you've got a prospect coming, we'll do our best to call you up for an update so that you can introduce your offering to the entire group. So then afterward, as usual, we share contact information for everybody who's permitted to do so. And at that point, you've got everything you need. You can communicate at will with your prospect. So will you wind up in competition for prospects with other sponsors? Maybe, but not very likely, right? Remember, every sponsor has their own specific targeting requirements and geographical range. And also, for this beta release of the sponsorship program, we're actually only accepting a total of 12 sponsors. It's like a shakedown cruise. It gives us a window to create new features and management tools and figure out how best to serve our sponsors operationally before we have to scale. So we'll run our initial cohort of 12 sponsors for at least 3 months before onboarding another cohort with an expanded feature set and a higher price point. So the good news, our beta sponsor cohort gets all the new features of every upgrade, but they keep the price. So how much is that? All right, here's the $1 million question. Not much, right? So like I said, this is a beta program for us. So what we're asking is $1 per month per prospect. So a minimum of 100 prospects, that's $100 a month for our initial set of 12 sponsors. What you get an initial consultation via Zoom to get your targeting dialed in. You get access to your sponsor list that's updated several times a day as new data rolls into the system, regular communication with us so that we can adjust your targeting and get your list really dialed in, all the meetup invites and classmate alerts, and basically all the stuff that you already see as a Ringknocker member. All that stuff continues to happen in support of the sponsor relationship and also in support of your relationship with the folks on your list. So not a bad deal for $100 a month. And finally, got to say this: if you don't like it, not a big deal. We will refund up to 12 months of sponsorship fees. So this needs to be a win all around. How do you do it? Just get in touch. I'm looking at some stuff on the chat already. You guys know how to reach me via email. So all you got to do is ask, and we will set you up and get the ball rolling, and you will be all set up with a Ringknocker sponsorship. So that's it. That's the whole pitch. I really appreciate you guys sticking around for it. Not our usual professional speakers, but be happy to entertain any questions that you guys have about the sponsorship program.
Jason, yes. I'll kick off and ask something. How dynamic can we dial it in? In other words, I might have a need for this particular kind of a flavor of this person this month, and then 2 months later, hey, I'm looking for somebody from this. I want to add, I want to remove, I want to query in a dynamic way. Can I do that through your Google Sheet?
Yes. Yeah. So there's a little bit of lag time. When I compared this to Google, I actually wasn't kidding. We use Google's PageRank algorithm, right? So that's a recursive algorithm, and it takes a few iterations to dial in any changes. So when we make changes to your targeting, you'll see some result within about an hour, but it takes about a day for those results to settle down, right? And that would be the same if you dramatically changed your targeting, right? So yes, you can change your targeting month by month, even week by week if you wanted to, and within a day or two, it will have settled down to the the new regime. You can also, if you can also sort of overlay targeting, right? So this is, it's an additive process. So if you had sort of two sorts of targeting that you wanted to run simultaneously, we could just layer them on top of one another, and you'd wind up, your results would wind up being a mixture of both. Real quick, let's talk about what you can target. It's worth mentioning. So obviously everybody here is on LinkedIn. You've seen a LinkedIn profile. You know the stuff that's available on the LinkedIn profile, right? So you can see a person's job history and school history and you know, the skills that they've been endorsed for and all that kind of thing. So fundamentally, that's the sort of stuff that we can target on, right? We can also sort of group things into categories. So we can group companies into industries, schools into categories like Ivy League or service academies and that kind of thing. And then we can target those. Now, a big component, because this is based also on connections, a big component of this is the connections that people have, right? So my score in the LinkedIn database is actually composed not only of stuff about me, but also stuff about all the people who I'm connected to in a lot of different ways. LinkedIn connections for sure, but also people who I you know, served in the Navy with at the same, like on the same ship at the same time, or people who I worked at the same company with at the same time, or people who I, you know, went to the Naval Academy with, right? So all that information is you know, publicly available on LinkedIn, so we exploit all of that. So so you know, just like Google with you know, with web pages where high quality pages tend to be connected to one another, same deal here, right? So your score borrows a little bit from the scores of all the people that you're connected to in all the different ways that you can be connected to them, right? And so that filtered by the stuff you're interested about for your prospects, you know, entrepreneurship or franchising experience, or, you know, the experience with a particular ship class or what have you, right? So that's what goes into that score. As a sponsor, you don't really have to be worried too deeply about the technical aspects of, you know, the weighting and all that kind of thing. And we'll take your orders in English, right? And we'll try to translate the result into English on the back end, so that really what you're going to do is you're going to look at your list and go, yeah, I think I'd like a little bit more of that and a little bit less of that, and then we'll turn the knobs back on our end of it.